Okay, we're live for the latest edition of the Data Value Show. Today's episode, the source of BS or bullshit in the data world. And I've got my good friend, Steven Macleod, on the show. Hi, Steven, how you doing?
Hi, Chris. How are you? Good, thank you. Yep.
So I think me and Steven, over the years, we seem to have a similar view on a few things, and we end up commenting on particular topics at the time, and over the years we seem to both be as angry or
Grouchy.
grouchy, and have very similar views. And you were on the show last year, and we were talking about that data-centric approach of everything starts with the data, which was very insightful. And then I think at the beginning of the year, I did a post about saying the year of calling out BS in the data world, which, you put a comment and prompted us scheduling this today. So for the audience and anyone that didn't catch the last show, do you want to get yourself an introduction?
Okay, well, I think of myself as chief data curmudgeon, as in grouchy old bugger. My opinions come from the fact that I have done autopsies on more than 1,000 systems when I was doing data migration work, which I generally don't do so much of now. And it's just blindingly clear to me that the source of data problems are the operational systems and software developers' inability to learn the basics of data. That's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were just chatting before the show about the lever that we've had of having business focused people in the data industry, or having technical focused, and its pendulum has swung over the years. I think at the beginning it was more business focused people that were doing the business intelligence, and I think we swung quite far the other way with the Hadoop era, and we still probably haven't got back to that point that we were at the beginning of this data industry, or the 30 years I've been involved in, at least anyway.
Right. But so I think we need to define the BS in data.
Yep.
And for me, or for what I see going on, is data is this dry, crusty turd that sits in the enterprise, and it's covered in chocolate.
Yep.
And the people that are involved on the peripheral of data, all they see is the chocolate, and they don't dive in and get their hands dirty and do autopsies on the data to find out what's really going on. And I think the reason why this has happened is because data is a Ponzi scheme in a suit. And at the top, you have of the Tom Ponzi scheme, and these are the guys who are creaming the money, the consultants, and below that, they're supported by the software vendors. And then you've got your CIO and your CDO, your software developers, and the people holding this whole Ponzi scheme up are the poor data engineers that have to deal with this crusty crap and do something with it. And so the outcome of this conversation needs to be, how can the data engineers take over, eliminate, put to one side the Ponzi scheme and rise through the ranks?
So, and you just brought this. I love the term, the Ponzi scheme, and the pyramid that's supporting it, all those layers. But if you go back to the source of the BS and what's out there, and I'll give you Hadoop as an example. I mean, Hadoop promised the world, and it didn't deliver at all. So where did the source come from, the fact that it was going to solve all of these problems? It was from key individuals or a limited few that probably could get it to work for their use case, but probably overselling, and everyone else under-delivered on what was promised. So, I mean, there's another example we had earlier was reverse ETL. So there was a whole marketing products out there that were specialized in reverse ETL. What was reverse ETL? It was the vendors created this brand, this capability, and was it really required? You could have got away with using other tools that are there, but it was marketed to the individuals that the marketing teams, so they could go and deliver this stuff themselves.
So someone had a thought, someone funded it. All those people, have they spent 10,000 hours getting their hands dirty dissecting data? And my observation is that's not the case. So I blame the greatest blame with Gartner.
Yep.
So Gartner's a $50 billion company.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. And they either directly advise or they heavily influence every enterprise on the planet. So I didn't go to Gartner and look at what they thought. I'd already got my hands dirty in the systems that I see in their Magic Quadrant, and they don't enforce referential integrity. The systems are denormalized, and their structures are fundamentally rubbish. The ones that Gartner are promoting in their Magic Quadrant. And how I get lost for words on, do they not know that that's the thing that you have to look for? And what's interesting is in 1999, when they put out their first Magic Quadrant, the systems that were in there were SAP and Oracle.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying that these are bad systems, but guess who's in there in 2024? SAP and Oracle. Yeah. Same ones.
So who sits on the board of Gartner? I think Larry does, doesn't he?
I think you might. I don't know, but I think you might be right.
I think he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the same decade, we had the Hubble telescope. Now we've got the James Webb and self-landing rockets. But we fundamentally have the same. We've had no real serious development in the way we develop software. And as an example of what needs changing that hasn't changed is the stack in the software stack in a system. Every layer is independently written, which is a description of the business process by different people using different languages, software languages, and different tools. And it's been like that for 30, 40, 50 years. And that seems like a blindingly obvious place that we can become a lot more productive through data-driven. Let's talk about AI-generated code. This is off the pyramid, by the way, off the Ponzi scheme. AI-generated code is really cool. You type in something and it returns 40 lines of code, which is pretty good, and then you go and adapt it. But data-generated code, data is deterministic. So you can write 300,000 lines of code, which is what we do for our typical customer. And we don't even look at the code because the data, if the data is wrong, it's going to return an error and say that we can't write the code. So whilst people are thinking AI-generated code is amazing, quietly data-generated code is going to be the thing that.
So when you say data, so you metadata driven, was that what you're referring to? Yeah, totally get you. And we talked about this, and John Cook, if he's listening, this is something that he's a big champion for as well. Is and you said this when we were on the show last time from your views, is if you define the data and then drive from the data any business processes, the business processes will define what screen and automation you need, and then you can actually drive the screen generation off. And
correct.
Again, when we talked about it before, is that we allow these people to go and develop the screens and go and get that nice UX CX sort of feeling, but it's not lined up.
Correct.
This is where you'll get
still a turd underneath that beautiful UI.
Exactly. Yeah. So
not always, by the way. There are some software programmers who can do beautiful data. The problem is you've got to take an enterprise-wide view.
Yep.
And if you're adding crappy data to your enterprise-wide view, that's like salt in your coffee.
Yep.
It just ruins the whole lot.
Yep.
Let's talk about software vendors in the modern data stack.
Yes, let's do it.
First of all, they are currently needed.
Yep.
But the reason why the modern data stack seems to have developed is because we've gone from a small number of large systems in the like 30 plus years ago to a small number of large systems and a very large number of small systems. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems the modern data stack is there to unify the data out of the operational systems. Well, the operational systems are predominantly point solutions, but the modern data stack is 13 categories of software. They themselves are point solutions. So now we've got this layer of point solutions covering the turd of point solutions. And that's never going to work.
Yeah, and you see, there's a big shift in the I'll call it the consolidation era or whatever that's happening at the moment. So Microsoft has got this all-in, and they've probably been in that all-in place for a little while, but they've got the Fabric, it's got the BI reporting, it's got your Dynamics. You can share the data between them all. Snowflake, it looks like they're just about to acquire Red Panda, which is the ability to stream data in there. They have cataloging capabilities. They can do the quality bit now. So
are they? I don't. Technically, I'm not a data engineer according to the job description. I only design operational systems, which actually automates the analytical. I don't need these systems because I automate the analytical.
Yep.
Because they're two sides of the same coin.
Yep.
With slight differences in the performance tuning.
Yep.
That's all it is. How hard can that be?
So I talked about this a little while ago. Is the data platform gravity? I think we refer to it as. And there's technology out there, HTAP databases, that hybrid transactional analytical processing databases, which, as you say, the configuration thing, it can deal with that. It knows that this needs to be block sizes for small writes updates. This needs to be block sizes for larger scans. The technology, I mean, Snowflake came up with this Unistore, which had someone out, and it hasn't really progressed too much. I think there's a German company that's got a database that does this. But I think when that problem's been solved and it's become mainstream, and John Cook was talking about this with like business processes. So now you have a layer that can deal with small transaction updates, plus like other workloads for analytical stuff and machine learning. But the data is the model of how it's linked from your operational to the analytical sources is already predefined in the metadata, as you're saying. So what mapping, what aggregation rules means you don't have that. Sorry.
Yeah, let's talk about that, and I'll include the semantic layer just because I want to see how many people we can upset in 1 hour.
Oh yeah, no, we can touch on semantic layers as well. Yeah, go on. You want to go for the semantics?
So the semantic layer is like the nerdy guy who never gets invited to the party. They turn up on Sunday morning to do the cleanup.
Yeah.
And so they're there after the fact. Oh, we've got a mess. Look at the mess. We need someone to come and clean this up and make sense of it. Now, the semantic layer, everything in all these tools are required. They're critical. However, the semantic layer, that uses metadata and it can do these things, and it will get integrated in other ways. But it's in the wrong place. It needs to be the very first thing that happens. It's right at the beginning of the information lifecycle. It needs to be driving operational and analytical.
Yep.
And whilst it's stuck as an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, well, first of all, you go and look in a semantic system, and you look for first name.
Mm.
And you can see that first name is in 50 systems. But there's 500 systems. It never gets finished.
Mm.
It's the top 50 big ones, and all those department level systems never get touched because the job just becomes too big.
Yep.
And budget gets worn out. So semantic layer is fine, but it needs to be moved.
So thinking, I agree. I do agree, and I'm going to link this back to like the business. I'm just making a note of this. Business processes. So if you define all your journeys that your customer onboarding, your billing process, your stock replenishment, whatever those business processes are for your organization, and you build up those with the semantics that they need as you go through each of those hops. Okay, it needs this data, needs. If you map out all those business processes and store them as metadata and actually capture all of the attributes that are needed and where they're referenced elsewhere, you're right. You can actually generate that semantic layer off the business process. Everything starts with the business processes. So if you define that, your semantic layer can hang off that. The location of that data and the owner of that data can hang off that. How that any business rules associated with the combination of that data and how that's used, you define it there as well. So I think that's the thing that I've been in many companies where they've done that whole very, very long and expensive process of mapping out all the business processes in a large organization. It's normally on the back of a transformation project, and it just never gets updated again. It's just done once and left.
Yes, that's right. Yes, because it's not driving.
Yeah,
it's not. So the way that I see, if the semantic layer is moved to the beginning of the information lifecycle, then what you have is a description of the business.
Yep.
And then from that, what you end up with is representations. So if you use the semantic layer to build the UI, that's a representation of the business process.
Yep.
If you use the semantic layer to build a chart, that's the same business requirement, just a different visual representation. If you use it to write the code, that's it's just another representation. So everything is in sync. It's the same. It's the same business process, just represented in half a dozen different ways.
Yeah.
Let's upset the CIOs because they are supporting the software vendors. CIOs. Well, the main thing about CIOs, from what I see, is the job description is in the title, information. But their expertise is contract negotiations and project management. And in preparation for this conversation, I looked at what the role of a CIO is, and it does include data. But then I go and look at I don't want to be a CIO, by the way. Go and look at people looking for CIOs, and in every occasion it doesn't mention data. So the CIO needs to be chief contract negotiator.
Yep.
And what we need is the data engineer to rise up and become chief of information.
So, and it's something I've talked about before. Is the CDO roles normally most organisations set up to fail because they don't have the right reporting line to be able to achieve what they need. And you're right, the CIO has been around for so long that it's the name. It was named before we had this understanding of where data fitted into it, and then you got a CTO in the mix as well. What do they do? And something I've gone around the house on this a few times of where the CDO should report, and the more I go around to it should be part. You should have a chief product officer. The product is, and then data is either, or the data officer, it becomes part of that product officer role, and and it's an internal product for this particular case. It's how I'm actually getting the operational systems to go through, but it's I don't know the answer to this one.
I do, because I'm super grouchy.
Go for it.
The average tenure of a CDO is 18 months, apparently.
Yeah, that's what I've seen as well. Yeah.
So they go in, they fail. They go somewhere else and they fail. It's not all these things that we're complaining about. It's no one's fault, other than Gartner, of course. In my experience, and we've had this conversation before, and I think you generally you've had a different experience.
Mm.
CDOs at best have a understanding of analytical data. Well, until they have an understanding of operational data, which is where it all comes from,
Very true.
They're never gonna achieve anything.
Yeah.
So there's these vertical roles.
It's been them and us for such a long time of the operation, and I think the gap has closed to some degree. I'd like to think, well, maybe we've had some movement, but before, when you had the mainframes where things are running on, there'd be a separate team that would be taking that out. It was the data team. We've moved on with lots of SaaS products out there, but they're normally the CRM, the ERP is done by someone else and not your team. But they're sharing some of that DevOps processes or data ops processes, and the whole release process has become a bit more joined up. But they are seen as totally different areas, and operational reporting is critical. And I've been so many places where they don't know who owns it. Oh, that's the report data team. But hold on, it's operational reporting. We do batch. We don't do real time. So I don't. Yes, it's if JT is listening, I'd give the answer depends, because that's the cop out. We got a question from Ramona actually. It's,
Yes. I have never mentioned that in. Well, to be honest, all the enterprises that I've worked with that have semantic layers, they just don't take it seriously. It's unfinished. No one's putting the effort in, and I think that's because the outcome is. If the semantic layer drives operational development, or the development of operational systems, then I think it adds a lot more value. I think actually what happens is there's emergencies. So you're the semantic layer guy, but can you just work on this, because this is really urgent and the CFO has asked for it.
So I just want to unpack and semantics mean different than talking semantics. It can mean different things.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to Cognos days. You had a catalog, business objects, you had a universe. So I think what they call them now, they call them bundled. You've got a BI tools bundled its semantic layer with it, and you've got some companies like Cube and AtScale, I think, is another one as well. They define semantic layers, which then are BI tool agnostic, and then they could be used by either you could interface into the bundled BI, into the bundled catalog or a universe or whatever they call it, the vendors.
It's still, at the end of the day, a point solution.
Yeah.
A point solution trying to record point solutions, and I've never seen one achieve its. No. I've never seen one achieve its potential or its outcome.
No, again, it's that centralization. There's one person or one well, maybe a couple actually across this. And as I say, when things have to get done quickly, someone will just buy. Oh, I'm not paying for that part of my budget, or it's an afterthought. Which and I suppose the other thing, I was just thinking, API contracts. The contract defined the API, in some degree, that there is a semantic layer or knowledge put into it there.
My thinking is so much more basic than that.
Yeah.
Every time you have to add an API, there's this exponential curve of complexity. If you get your data right, if we reduce point solutions, and the only way to reduce point solutions is to model correctly.
Yep.
You need less APIs. Every time you mention one of these things, you have technical debt.
Yeah.
And it just grows exponentially. Every time you add an API, you've got 5 more things you got to do.
Yeah. Unless you're driving those APIs from metadata driven.
Yeah, yes, good point. Actually, correct, which we do. But you want less of all the stuff.
Yeah.
It's all. Actually, let's talk about integration. I want to complain about integration.
Or should we just pick up this one question before we go on to that one? So while we're on the CDO one, it's a Dan Blake. Yeah, I'd like to consider CDO a blend of a generalist role and understanding of operational systems, engineering, governance, strategy. What in your view makes a great CDO and why? And I'm going to use it depends. It's the size of the company is one thing, and but the main skill I think they need, which is not a technical skill, it's a storytelling skill or the ability to be able to convert business language into technical language and vice versa. I think if you can nail that, and the rest of it probably comes under that, would be my view.
I couldn't disagree more.
Okay, right. We've got another one from Val as well before we move on. So.
Hang on. Let's talk about the CDO.
Oh, go on. Okay, go on. We'll pause. Yeah.
So I've got a friend who's a wastewater, keeping the crusty turd theme going.
Yeah.
He's a wastewater engineer. He's chief wastewater engineer, basically for most of New Zealand. So a person after when you get to our age, for example, or maybe 40 plus, you have the intellectual capacity to be an expert in multiple domains.
Yep.
So my friend who's a chief wastewater engineer is an expert wastewater engineer. And he's great with people, and he can tell the story, and he can manage up and manage down and manage sideways. The chief, I've had several CDOs tell me, I don't know much about data. This is what I do. And they prove it every day. The CDO has to be the chief of data.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to be chief of data across the data layer.
Yep.
Operational to analytical.
Yeah, I agree.
And they have to be able to talk the business talk.
So the problem is they have to, but the problem is how they're structured, where the hierarchy in an organization, they either report to the CIO or they report to the CTO, and they don't have they have no able to influence the operational systems. It's out of their control. So
well, there's now we're starting to talk how to get rid of the Ponzi scheme. Yeah. But before because what has to happen is the data engineers need to create their new hierarchy and take over the CDO role. But before they take over the CDO role, the data engineers also have to take over the operational data role.
So you see a world, and I do think we will get to that one. Is like it is you have engineers. The engineers they are looking both ways. They don't distinguish between the two now. They know I've got this new operational attribute requirement that's going to require this analytical stuff. It's one release, one team working on it. We make the changes here, we make the change there, and push the deployment out for everything.
But are the data engineers involved in the decision to use product X or product Y, for example?
Yeah.
So who's checking? There's basically three things to check: referential integrity,
yep,
normalization, and constraints.
Yep.
Constraints are the I don't know if this works. Constraints are the database word where tariffs are for Trump. Constraints are the beautiful word.
Yeah.
Constraints are the database. Keeping in mind COD's 12th rule, which says something like database rules stay in the database.
Yep.
So don't put the rules up here.
Mm-hmm.
The constraints have to be in the database.
Yep.
It's the database saying, no, you can't do that. Well, constraints are the biggest thing that are missing. The biggest thing that I see that are missing out of systems.
It's one of the biggest sources of poor quality data.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. So you only got to know 3 things.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to learn.
Would you add business rules to it anywhere as well?
Business rules. Give me more detail.
So a calculation to for a particular measurement or something, where it's calculating square footage or calculating surface area, or a calculation that's based on other attributes that are part of the payload.
I think yeah, I'm about to lose anyone who might slightly respect me. Anyone that's left that might slightly respect me, I'm about to lose them. I've never understood why you take data out of a database, bring it up here, do stuff with it, go and get more data, bring it up here, do some more stuff with it, and then put it back. We do almost all of that stuff in the database layer.
Push down,
because the data's right there.
Yeah,
it's really. Now I know that's not apparently that's not considered best practice.
Yeah.
But the cost of it is, the cost of bringing the data up, doing and then putting it back is more than the cost of having those rules in the database layer.
Yeah, true.
However, I'm happy to be corrected on that.
Yeah, unless those rules are actually applied at the time. So in the application layer itself, you can actually perform that.
But that's a UI, more of a UI rule than a.
Yeah, but if you tracked it, you can metadata driven it. You can drive it by the metadata.
Yes. Yes. Wish we do.
Yeah. So, we've got one from Val here, and then we can see which direction we're going to go after this. The problem is that it's hard to put a solid number of implementation of these efficiencies in data. The business only care about business cases. That's the other thing. It is your point solution thing that you mentioned before, Stephen, is that every company only wants to fix one thing at a time, and the appetite to do like a big to involve many departments or many moving parts to go do something that's probably more strategic and more beneficial, but it just has more people and more coordination.
Can you bring up the message again?
Yeah, sure. Yep, sorry.
Thanks. Okay, so I just can't imagine the stormwater engineer having the pipe's broken. You got to fix it. Yeah. And I use pipe because it's a nice little analogy to pipelines.
Yeah.
How to go about? Let's talk about how the data engineer can solve this, and then that will answer that question. Also, what I said about the CDO, I'd be interested in the person who asked that question. I'd be interested in the people who have asked the questions. They should come back and tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah,
they
normally tell you if you're wrong, but sometimes you don't get.
Yes, right. So let's talk about the data engineer role, because, well, first of all, just above that in my little Ponzi scheme is the software developer. But the software developer is all about the chocolate, and they're the ones creating the crusty turd. Now, it's not always the case, but when you take an enterprise-wide view, there is a predominantly large percentage of data that just does not follow the basic rules. And so we can't rely on, but the software engineer has some phenomenal skills in creating UI and business rule layer and all that sort of thing. So they're clearly a valid and important part of the role. They just should not be in control of data.
Yeah.
So the only way that we can solve the data problem and stop being grouchy old bastards is for the data engineer to take over, because they're the closest thing that we have to a group of people that generally have an interest in data and a skill set to solve this problem. But here's the problem. Here's a problem of the data engineer, and This is going to be very oxymoronic, and there's an emphasis on the moronic. The job description of a data engineer is they take raw data. And I go, raw data? You spent $30 million on this new operational information system, and all you achieved is raw data. Well, that's bad value, man.
Yeah.
So it's a problem if it's raw data. The problem is it is raw data. That's the oxymoron.
Yeah.
Not always, but if you take an enterprise-wide view, you're spending all this money and all you're achieving is raw data.
Yep.
So imagine the operational wastewater engineer. Okay, I've made an operational wastewater system. Here's all your pipes. Now we need the analytical wastewater engineer to come along, and it failed, by the way. We need the analytical engineer to come along and make these pipes something more useful.
Yep.
It just would never happen. So the problem is the raw data, and the problem is the disconnect between operational data and analytical data, and it has to be this is 100% Joe Rees's gig. The future of data is convergence.
Yep.
Operational data and analytical data is just two sides of the same coin, slightly tuned in slightly different ways.
Exactly.
But the data engineer can't fix that because they've got this turd.
Yep.
They have to go back and fix the turd.
So I'm just thinking, again, how we've got into this position where the data is so raw, it doesn't have all of this additional value associated to it. And before, we used to have lots of custom-made applications. So mainframe, people have their own CRM, they'd have their own ERP system, their own billing system, and while they created that, they probably did have a lot more of the understanding of the data that was there, and it wasn't raw data then because it was all in the same application. Any reports or extracts or even operation reports were coming off that data there. So, we've gone the right, Salesforce, every single Oracle ERP that they bought over the time, from NetSuite to Siebel to all the other ones. So now,
well, funnily enough, PeopleSoft was incredible. It's one of the few systems that really stands out as, man, they really had some data people there.
Yeah, and Coda was another one that had that. Again, there's some really great, but they got gobbled up by the big players.
So let's go back up the Ponzi scheme.
Yep, Gartner.
Well, in this case, the software vendor.
Yep.
They gobbled up a phenomenal system in PeopleSoft. Like it really had the potential to be the future of data. They didn't know what they'd bought.
Yep.
So it got put to one side.
Yep. They're buying the competition. That's what they were doing. So yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah, but they bought an incredible piece of technology.
So the only losers in this is actually the businesses, the customers, because you're now large players buying up opposition or alternative solutions which are better, but then mothballing them, not developing them any further, and then you're limiting your choices. Now you have to go with what they've got.
I think the closer you get to the bottom of the Ponzi scheme are where the losers are. The software engineers who just want to make beautiful systems are losers because they have to deal with data and they're not interested in it. The data engineers are the big losers because they're given a job which should take 4 hours and they dig into it and it takes 40 hours.
Yeah.
And it just does crazy stuff to your head. Like having to deal with this is it's bigger than the brain can cope with.
So, and some comments I made here just a second ago, is it's simplifying the route to make changes and get things live. And the reason why we don't probably make as many changes and the difference between operational systems are stateless to some degree. You can make changes to it without having to worry about or how previous transactions have happened to some degree. Analytical applications, unfortunately, to make that change, it's not. You have to either backfill or recalculate stuff or rebuild stuff if you make a significant model changes.
Can we go back to Val's question? Oh, so we're down to the data engineer.
Yeah.
So now that we've landed at the data engineer, we can. What was his question?
Let's go back to it. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Right. So essentially, it's how do we build a new hierarchy where Gartner are archived and software vendors are no longer building point solutions. So the only people who have the skill or knowledge on how to do this is the data engineer.
Yep.
Here's a hypothetical. Well, the first thing is, I think Val's question is referring to technical debt. Really, how do we transition? And the way that I see this happening is the same way that personal debt is dealt with. Not that I have any, but I read The Richest Man in Babylon a long time ago, and I've never forgotten it. The way to deal with personal debt is you make a list of all your debts, and you order them in smallest to the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem with debt is there might be different numbers, but they all make the same amount of noise.
Yeah.
If you don't pay your credit card, you still get the monthly complaint.
Yeah.
So the way to deal with personal debt is you make your list and you get rid of the smallest debt that you have. Now the noise is gone, and now the money from that can be applied to the second smallest.
Yeah.
So make a list, and it doesn't have to be a full list. Just make a list of all your technical debt. Order it in whichever order you choose, smallest, most compelling, or most pressing, and have a data engineer solve it in an operational system. Now, the data engineer has to learn how to think like an operational data modeler, not an analytical. And I think the way to do this, and I need approval or veto or advice on this. It seems to me the Bill Inmon model is the perfect model for starting this process operationally, or at least it is a starting point.
Yep.
It's a way to get started.
I remember I've had Bill on the show and met him a few times, met him recently in Day-to-Day Texas, but the beginning of the career, he was Inman and Kimball, and we put in a number of Inman designed data warehouses, and the challenge for those ones is that getting that the route to getting the business access to the data. So they were very time consuming to perform that. You'd have to look at all the different source systems to map it into the same entity. To create it took a long time before you can go create your data marts, which meant that you lost your stakeholders on it. But you're right. I think.
So I'm talking about implementing the Bill Inman model as an operational information system. Yeah.
Well, I think we could if you only ever had one system. And the problem is that with mergers and acquisitions of different organizations, you end up with a big, you have 3 CRMs, you got 2 billing systems.
Yes, that's right.
You got a migration that's halfway through one to the other.
So why is it so hard to merge CRM systems? For nearly 30 years I did data migrations.
Due to all the customization that people make in them means that it's never straightforward. But yeah, it's not that difficult, but it's normally it's on that technical debt list. So for example, if someone's saying, "Well, get the budget. What am I going to get out of having these 3 systems in one place?" Oh, nothing. It just means it's might save a little bit of license cost.
But well, I left my mobile phone provider because they had 7 CRM systems, and it just drives you crazy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
As a customer, so that's why they need to be merged. The problem is CRM systems. We've had this conversation before.
They haven't evolved, have they?
Well, they're accounting systems. the accounting systems that have been adapted, and then, like, if you look at it, it's an accounting system that they've plonked other stuff onto. So that's the source of the problem. The source of the problem isn't the fact that you got three CRM systems. The source of the problem is that it's an appalling data model.
Yeah,
and it's in the Gartner Magic Quadrant.
So, we're obviously dealing with historical decisions that have been made, which has got us to the position we're in now, and we know that changing the tanker, it takes a long time to get it to the right place. So, do you think now, with the current world of Gen AI, ability to people to write systems much easier and make it just what you need, and the cost of these SaaS service providers going up and up, and how complicated do you really need a Salesforce for running your organization? Could you do something much simpler for what you need at a much lower cost? If that movement starts happening, and I refer to it as like we had challenger banks in the past, we got an era of probably challenger ones now. Maybe not in banks, but where there's been disruption in the past, where we had that from the web, the e-commerce sort of approach. I think there's a next evolution of that is like, okay, we can move faster, quicker, leaner, just what we need, designing an operational system that satisfies our analytical things at the same time, and we control our own destiny. We've halved our team size now, and we're not paying all this valuation, all this software cost.
So I've got a very clear answer to that. I try it. It's diabolical.
Oh, what? Doing something? Okay.
Yeah. Go and ask an AI to design you a model, and it will copy whatever is at the forefront of their. Because the AI, it might change in the future. So the AI has no data modeling intelligence. It just copies what
you got me slightly wrong. So maybe you still define your data model and actually have that, but then after that you go and let it code you creating your CRM system or anything like that.
Right. So I think it's really clear that if you define your model and you put a semantic layer at the beginning of the information lifecycle and use that, then you will be doing data generated code, not AI generated code, because data generated code lacks ambiguity. I'd be interested in what Val thought of my answer if we
understood. If you could let us know what you thought. I'm just checking one message from Callum here as well, which is linked to it. Is that one of the job? I'm not sure if you're referring to Dan. It's Dan's message. Maybe that's too. A blend of a generalist role. I understand. I mean, I think, Callum, we definitely, the CDO owns that whole process from raw to analytical. I think what Steve was talking about earlier is that CDO needs to own further downstream, shifting left to where the operational system, where that data gets specific.
Raw should not exist.
Yeah.
The job of this, and that is the job of the CDO should be that raw does not exist.
Yeah.
The problem is the CDO, in my experience, hasn't done the 10,000 hours of dealing with raw data.
Yeah.
Which is why the data engineer needs to become the CDO, because they have the skin in the game.
Yeah, I still have and I think data engineering is such a very large category or bucket that
sure.
Lots of people get put into now. And I mentioned earlier is that there's lots of more technical focused data engineers now, and they're probably not the right. I've got the right maybe soft skills or the right real life. Yeah.
But if there's 10 data engineers, one of them, you only need one CDO.
Yes. Yeah. So it's creating that team within there that you have that product owner or your representative of your data team that understands. He's your translator to go to the business and bring that back. Yeah, I agree.
Put it this way, the person who's CDO needs to have spent 10 or 20,000 hours being frustrated as hell, wondering why the data doesn't join up, and then realizing that referential integrity hasn't been enforced.
So and I think we can agree that's what we want, but going into an organization, where would they need to sit, or what ability to deliver that they need to be given? So they won't have autonomy over the source systems. The CIO's already got that. You probably haven't got the choice of the technology because you've got the CTO in there as well. So it needs to be a mind shift from that CEO level going, look, I've got too many C people here.
Yeah.
And I've got an overlap of what they're all doing. Right, let's go back to basics. I need someone to define the infrastructure. I need someone to define the application with the data in it. I need someone to work out how I'm getting high level here, but it could be the same person, it could be, but have clear boundaries of what each of those are doing. And I think that those C titles just get dished out just because people want them. They've been added on to the patchwork quilt of like adding things to your pipeline and stuff, or your stack. We just do it to our org chart as well, and we don't go back.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. I don't want to run out of time and not complain about Snowflake.
Well, I have to be careful because obviously I can't complain too much. Go ahead. What's your beef with Snowflake?
Okay, great tools. However, here's the one thing that I just do not comprehend, and I've looked into this, and I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. You move your data into Snowflake, you don't bring with it all the constraints.
No.
So now you don't know what the rules were. So only a person could decide that Snowflake, that's a good idea. The only people or group of people that could decide that's a good idea are people who do not understand operational data.
So, I mean, I'll give you the same. So Oracle, when I used to do Oracle Data Warehouse, taking it from Oracle Source Systems, we never took the constraints across from that because
But you've still got access to them.
Oh, you still have access to them from many of the source systems. So you could go and write out the metadata to go and get. In fact, on Snowflake, you can actually put. You can't enforce them, but you can actually put relationships which get stored as metadata, which can be. But yeah, there is no.
I was pretty sure I was going to get smashed on that one, to be honest.
Yeah, you can't enforce a primary key. In fact,
no, and I understand that part. It's just having the knowledge.
Yeah. So if you
can bring the knowledge with you.
You could bring them across. If you took the metadata out of that, you could then go and reapply them to ones in there. I haven't seen many people doing that, especially at that level.
Right. Well, that's my experience too. I haven't seen.
No.
What were the rules? Oh, I don't know. Have I got access to the operational system? Oh, no.
You also have, and this is a good idea actually. You also have like data monitoring functions within Snowflake now as well, which can look for some of these things. So you could, in theory, probably write a data monitoring function that represented the relationship we're in there, and actually apply that checks when it was in there. Not that I've seen that done yet. But the other thing I've seen it quite useful for is actually in the presentation layer, or your gold layer, they call it now, whatever, but where your facts and dimensions, you can actually put relationships between them, but not enforce. So then your semantic layer can actually pick that up from there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I want to complain about people that talk about talking to the business. Actually,
so what's your views on that?
Well, people who say that just have no interest in data. Oh no, don't worry about data. Don't worry about the shiny tools. You don't have to be technical. You've just got to talk to the business. Well, the problem there is, tell me how to talk to the business.
Yeah.
How exactly do you talk to the business? Like, provide a bit of share your knowledge.
I'll give you one example where it was Jesse, give him a shout out for it, because Jesse Anderson, it was at Data Texas the previous year, and it's when requirements come to the data team from the business, without you actually having talked to them, actually really understanding it. I need this real-time system to do some reporting on it. I need it real time. Okay, so engineer that wouldn't have questioned that. Right, we're going to go and buy this very expensive, like real-time ability, additional storage, and the cost, the rest of it. But they go to the business and go, okay, so you need this real time. So
right.
What do you what every hour? Is that enough? Or actually, some of that data doesn't happen until the end of the day. So daily's all right, actually. And you go, that conversation has just saved you 100, 200 grand in and also your ability to deliver the project on time.
So that's what I think we should be hearing. But all we hear is, go talk to the business. I want to. So as a because I don't want to complain without a solution.
Yep.
I want to say how I talk to the business.
Go for it.
And I'm going to use. We've made a system that is involved in the supply chain, and pretty complicated. So I'll use that as an example. I set up my desk in the middle of the warehouse, in the middle of the distribution center, not in the soundproof room off to one side. So I'm sitting there watching the forklifts zooming past, noisy as hell, and I'm talking to the forklift driver, and I'm talking to their boss, and the people who devan the containers, and their boss.
Yep.
And I turn up at 6 a.m. for the first shift, and I become part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I do their warm-up exercises with them. And then when they go to the cafeteria, I go to the cafeteria and I sit with them. Mm-hmm. And we end up with a human interaction.
Yep.
So that's how I talk to the business. And also the next important part, which is how to be an engineer, is I observe what they do. Yep. I hear what they say, but I observe what they do. And I've got all my senses. It's really noisy, it's busy, but I can see the clarity of the aisles and I can see the opposite of that. And then I be an engineer.
Yep.
But the general thought there is when people post things on LinkedIn, tell us how you do it.
Yeah.
So there was a post, simplest post on LinkedIn, which I'm sure you saw, about left outer joins.
I think that was Ramona.
Oh, was it? That was brilliant. It's the best post.
There you go, Ramona. Shout out for you.
Yeah. And we all, it's bread and butter, but there was precision.
Yep.
And so I'd like to see more of that. And that's how the data sorry, I've got a big picture thought that I'd like to end with.
Go for it.
Sorry about this. So wastewater engineers and bridge engineers. I think about the Brooklyn Bridge, which is over 100 years old. But that was based on thousands of years of bridge engineering to get to that point. Software is 40, 50 years. Data is half that.
Yep.
So we have a very, very immature industry.
Yep.
And the things that we've been complaining about today and the need for data engineers to take over the data layer is a maturing of a very, very immature industry.
I agree. Yeah, we've made it complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated.
Yeah. And the answer to that is the data engineer taking over metadata at the beginning of the information lifecycle. Yeah,
I fully agree with that. So I think, well, you did get a reply back from Val, so I'll just put it in there. But you were saying you're right. He's just more angry and grouchy. He said but yeah, and I'd say Ramona. I think that was her post about the left outer join, right outer join. Always was a great one. What did you say? Oh no, I did the wrong one. But if the model, if I model a business, doesn't that mean I'm talking to the biz when I use the model? Oh yeah, she's joking on that one, but yeah. So we've got about a minute left, and great conversation, Stephen. I always enjoy your insights, and I'm just as angry as you sometimes, or as grumpy as you sometimes on these things. So it's good to be in the same company. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, best way to get hold of you, LinkedIn.
Oh, just go to occam.works and fill in the form, or Stephen@occam.works.
There you go. So if he wants to reach out and maybe moan at Stephen about stuff or agree with it, please give him a shout. I'm not too sure I've got on the show next week. I might actually do a solo one, Ramona, with my presentation from Day-to-Day Texas. So watch this space for next week. Yeah. So apart from that, some dates. Winstead Conference, obviously 7th of March in Austria, and I got a meetup I think on the 26th of February in London. And if you're in New York, I'm at the Alternative Data Meetup tomorrow. But if anyone want to get hold of me, you know where you can find me. So we'll probably call that a wrap, Steve. But thanks again, absolute
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thanks for having me on, and that was fun. And I feel lighter.
Good. So there's a therapy session that Joe runs on a Friday.
Yes.
I went to it. So I don't know if that time works for you. It was at 7 p.m. for me on Friday or something like that. So yeah, everyone's a little rant on that as well. So maybe it's the first one I've gone to, but yeah, it's always fun. And thanks to the audience. And yeah, till next week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.
See you later. Bye-bye.